I was folding her son's laundry when she said it, standing in the hallway, arms crossed like she was bracing for a gust of wind that never came. "You're not welcome anymore." I didn't answer her right away. I folded the socks into balls and set them on top of the stack. Gray, small, soft, the kind with little animals on them. I bought them. I still had the receipt in my purse like I did with most things. Habit from leaner years. I looked at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's just not working out." That's what she added, as if we were roommates who'd argued over dishes. Her son was watching something in the next room. A cartoon with loud voices. He laughed at something on the screen. I heard the creak of his snack bowl in his hand. That was the part that stuck with me. That light plastic clatter. Like none of this mattered at all. I didn't ask her why. I didn't cry or plead or even breathe louder than normal. I just nodded once, said all right. She was surprised. I could tell. Maybe she'd expected a fight. She always did like scenes. Not shouting, but pity. Tears in public places. Whispered outrage with an audience. I never did play my part well. I finished folding the last shirt, placed it on the stack, and walked back to the guest room. It's the room with the futon and the air mattress and the boxes she hadn't opened since her last move. The room she let me sleep in after my surgery. After the hospital said I shouldn't live alone, after she said, of course you'll stay with us, I packed my things in silence. One bag, not even full. A small envelope of documents. One pill bottle, nearly empty. My winter coat, even though it was May, I've never trusted May. It promises warmth, but there's always one last frost. She didn't check on me, didn't come to see if I needed help carrying the bag. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. She was in the kitchen pouring juice. No eye contact. I told her I was leaving that night. She said nothing. The boy ran into the room, waving a toy. He smiled when he saw me. "Grandma," he said, and I had to stop myself from flinching. I bent down, kissed the top of his head, told him to be good, said okay, and ran back to the TV. I waited for her to say something, anything, but she just wiped the counter like it had never happened. I left the key on the table, not because she asked, but because I wanted to. It was, never mind that key. Outside, the air was cool and smelled of cut grass. I stood there for a moment and listened to the world. Just stood and let it all settle inside me. I walked to the bus stop and didn't look back. She didn't call that night. She didn't expect. I had more than just clothes in my bag. I wasn't always this calm. That came later. After the noise inside, me quieted down. I was 20 when I had her. It's 20, with a heart that didn't yet know how deeply it could bruise. Her father had already started disappearing by then, as that turned to days, a job that never had a paycheck. A mouthful of promises and fists full of ash. When I held her the first time, I thought she'd saved me. I thought if I could just pour enough love into her, it would fill the holes he left behind. I was wrong, but not for lack of trying. We grew up together, in a way. I fed her on coupons and secondhand shoes. I worked nights cleaning offices and spent the days half awake and half hungry, but she never went without. I made sure of that. Birthdays were always something. Not big, not expensive, but careful. I learned how to frost cakes from a librarian. I made her favorite one every year. Chocolate with raspberry jam in the middle. She used to lick the spoon. She used to say I was her best friend. She used to draw me in, crayon always smiling, always holding her hand. But children don't stay children. They learn to look elsewhere for what they think they need. When she was 14, she told me I was too much. She said it like she was quoting someone else, probably was. I didn't ask who. By then, she had started borrowing my makeup and hiding my good towels under her bed. She'd slam doors harder than needed. I'd say, be careful. And she'd say, you don't understand. Maybe I didn't. I was working 2 jobs. And still never enough. Never quite the right kind of mother, too tired, too plain, too full of rules. Still, I stayed. even when she got old enough to leave bruises with her words. The college phase was the hardest. She got in on scholarships and stubbornness, and I packed her things neatly. She didn't want me to drive her there. Said she could handle it. Said, don't make it a thing, so I didn't. I mailed her care packages, key bags, notes that said I miss you. Sometimes she replied. Sometimes she DIDN, single quotes, D. Then came the boyfriend. Then the wedding. I wasn't asked to help plan. I was told when and where to show up. She said, just wear something nice. I sat in the back row. I watched her walk down the aisle on someone else's arm. The photos were all smiles. I wasn't in any of them. Still, I smiled. I thought maybe she'd come back around. Thought maybe babies would soften her. Maybe motherhood would remind her of what we had. She called me when her son was 3 months old. Said she was exhausted. Said she didn't know how anyone did it. I packed a bag and came that same week. I moved into the guest room, cooked dinners, cleaned bottles. Rocked him to sleep when she was too tired. She let me stay. For a while then. One morning she looked at me like I was something left behind on a porch. Said it wasn't working out. Said things felt off. She didn't know I had a copy of the deed. That I'd helped with the down payment on that house. That my name had been on the papers quietly, legally, without her noticing. She didn't remember. Or didn't want to. It was after her son was born. Skid called crying. They were underwater, she said. Bills piling up. House at risk. I'd cashed out my savings, helped her sign. The lawyer handled it. She thanked me in passing, like it was nothing. I didn't ask for anything in return. It's just a roof and a little warmth. She forgot all that when she said, you're not welcome anymore. But I hadn't. Would you like to proceed with part 3 next? She said. Write part 3, 1,000 words, ChatGPT said. Here is part 3 of my daughter. Said you're not welcome anymore. So I packed my things. She didn't expect the rest, continuing in the same intimate, emotionally restrained voice. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't happen in a thunderclap. It's quieter than that. It hums behind a closed door, lives in silence stretched. Too long. It's a birthday card that never arrives. A look that turns away a second too soon. It had been building for years. I just refused to see it. I used to tell myself she was busy. That's what daughters become, busy. Busy with work, with bills, with husbands who want things a certain way. I told myself I was lucky to even be nearby, to have a room, a key, a grandson who ran to me when he fell. But the key was always temporary. The room always borrowed. Never part of the new blueprint of her life. I was a sketch left over from the old plans. She changed the tone first. Not with what she said, but how she said it. Can you not do that right now? Why are you always rearranging things? He doesn't. Need a sweater, he's fine. Little things. Said lightly, like she was brushing crumbs off a table. Then there were the whispers on the phone. I wasn't meant to hear them, but old houses carry sound. I heard her say she felt suffocated. That she wished she'd said no when I asked to. Stay? I hadn't asked. She'd called me. She'd said, please come. I can't do this alone. That was when I should have known. It wasn't until I opened the mail that I truly understood. She'd left it on the table, a letter from the bank. My name was still on the deed. Her husband hadn't known. I'd made sure of that when I signed it, quietly, legally. She'd applied to refinance the mortgage he'd co-signed. Declared joint ownership. But the loan had bounced back, due to non-primary signature. That was me. I sat there with the letter in my hands. Her son's cereal bowl still warm next to it. They had tried to erase me. No fight. No screaming, just paperwork. It's an attempt to push my name off the page like dust. I didn't say anything. Not that night. Not the next day. I did what I always did, made myself small. Washed the dishes, folded the towels, pretended I couldn't. See the growing cold in her eyes? But inside something folded closed. A door, long open, finally latched shut. I started collecting things. Not just my clothes, but records, originals, copies. I visited the courthouse. I requested certified documentation. I knew how to do these things. I'd once handled all the forms for her school, her taxes, her first lease. I'd balanced bills on pay stubs and food stamps. I kept everything in a plain manila folder, tucked between a Bible and an old cookbook she never opened. I made no announcement. No farewell speech. I simply waited for her to speak the final word. "You're not welcome anymore." There it was. She thought she was cutting me loose. What she didn't see was that I had already unknotted the rope. When I left, I didn't go far. I checked into a motel by the highway. Cash only. Weekly rate. A cracked ice machine and faded floral sheets. It felt like breathing for the first time in months. I sat at the little desk and laid out the papers. The deed, the payments. The text messages she had sent begging for help. The emails where she'd called me her lifeline. I printed them. I numbered them. Placed them in order, not for revenge. For proof. Proof that I was not delusional. That I had not imagined the weight I carried for her. The roof I held up. The meals I cooked when her hands were shaking from exhaustion. I mailed a copy to myself, sealed and dated, and then I called the lawyer, the same one who'd helped me. Back then, a quiet man with slow speech and sharp eyes. He remembered me. Said he'd been wondering when I'd call. He filed the motion the next day. I didn't want to evict them. I wasn't heartless, but I wasn't going to be erased. Not from a house I paid for. Not from a life I sacrificed for. I wasn't there to see her face when the letter arrived, but I imagined she opened it at that same kitchen table, with the same indifference I'd seen so many times. Probably thought was junk dot until she read the name at the top, mine dot, and the notice at the bottom. Petition to reclaim shared property interest. I imagine the air changed in that room. I imagine for the first time in years she remembered that. I was not a guest. I was the one who gave her the roof, and now I was taking it back. Let me know when you're ready for part 4. You said, write part 4, 1,000 words. ChatGPT said. Here is part 4 of my daughter said, you're not welcome anymore. So, I've packed my things. She didn't expect the rest, continuing the quiet, emotional arc. The silence was immediate. Not a phone call, not a message. Not even a question. Just nothing. As if by refusing to exist in the space she gave me, I had forfeited the right to speak at all. But I had already spoken. In the only language that mattered, no documents, signatures, bound pages with stamps in the corner. There's a peace in that kind of certainty. It doesn't beg or plead. It just is. I stayed in that motel for 6 days before I heard anything. The room was small but warm. The heater ticked when it came on. There was a stain on the curtain in the shape of a handprint, or maybe a flower, depending on the light. I didn't mind. I ate toast most mornings. The motel coffee tasted like melted coins, but it was hot. I walked down to the post office, checked the P.O. box I'd opened in town. Nothing yet. The lawyer called on the 7th day. He said they responded. I waited. He said they're panicking. That was the word he used. Not disputing, not negotiating. Panicking. Apparently she hadn't told him, her husband, that my name was still on everything. She thought time erased legal ink. Or maybe she just assumed I'd stay quiet forever, like I always had. Love makes a woman forget her leverage. They were trying to call me, he said. He asked if I wanted to answer. I told him no. Let them speak. To the documents. I did open my old phone that night. I'd kept it powered off, wrapped in a dish towel at the bottom of my bag. When I turned it on, it trembled with messages. First, 2 missed calls. Then 4. Then 8. Then the texts. Are you okay? Can we talk? Why are you doing this? You know, we can't afford this right now. Please just be reasonable there. It was the word reasonable as if what I'd done before years of giving, shrinking, folding myself into corners had been unreasonable. As if my silence had always been the requirement. There was one message from her that caught me, though. It wasn't long. I didn't think you'd really leave. I read that one twice, then a third time. It made something crack in my nod pane. Exactly. More like recognition. She hadn't believed I was a person who could walk away. She thought I was a fixture, piece of furniture that couldn't unbolt from the floor. And she was right. For a long time, but not anymore. I turned off the phone again and went back to my toast the next week. They filed a counter motion. I saw the scan. Their lawyer tried to claim I'd gifted them the house, that I'd relinquished ownership by living in the guest room. I laughed out loud in that little motel chair because I had the emails, the deposits, the voice messages, the paper trail of a woman who'd come to help, not surrender. My lawyer smiled when I brought the folder in, said I'd done half his work for him, said, "You're more organized than most people who come through here." I told him that's what happens when you live decades keeping everyone else upright. You learn to track every receipt, 'cause when people forget what you gave them, the paper remembers. She texted again that weekend. "Mom, please, let's talk." The first time she'd used that word since. I left it didn't do what she hoped it would. I didn't answer. Instead, I mailed her a copy of the revised deed with the petition attached. No note, no return address. Just an envelope with my handwriting. She'd recognize it. I've always looped my YS like that. I wanted her to see what it looked like. A mother who remembered. A mother who knew what was hers. They left the house 3 weeks later. She didn't tell me. Found out through the lawyer. They signed the withdrawal, agreed to surrender their interest in exchange for debt forgiveness. I let them take the furniture, even the crib. I didn't want it. I walked through that house the next day, alone. Quietly. The guest room was exactly as I'd left it. My Bible was still on the nightstand. The blanket I'd used was folded neatly at the end of the bed. I touched it once, then let it go. I stood in the kitchen and stared at the empty space where my grandson used to sit. The booster seat was gone, but I remembered the pattern of the crumbs he used to make. How he'd drop grapes and say, "Oops," and I'd pretend it was the funniest thing I'd heard all day. I opened the pantry, one jar of peanut butter left. The brand I used to buy, I left it there. I didn't take revenge. I took presents. I didn't slam the door when I left. Closed it softly. That house is mine now. Every inch. Every nail and shutter and light switch. But I'm not moving back in. I have something else in mind. I didn't go back to the house. I owned it. Yes. Every legal corner of it. But stepping inside that space felt like stepping into a body I'd already shed. It had held me. It had also dismissed me. I made one final visit. A locksmith came, polite and curious, asking if I wanted to keep the same kind of deadbolt. I told him I wanted something quieter, smoother. I didn't need a fortress. I just didn't want anyone walking back in, like I hadn't changed the locks at all. I walked through each room slowly, not looking for anything, just confirming that I wasn't missing anything, not anymore. The walls were blank, no pictures. Even the smell was neutral. None of her perfume, none of the baby's powder, none of the kitchen's old warmth. I thought I might feel grief. I didn't. I felt like someone who'd finally stepped off a spinning ride. My legs were shaky, but the ground was solid. I called a real estate agent that afternoon, told her I wanted to sell it quietly. No showings until I'd left town. Lawn signs, no fuss. She said that was unusual. I said I'd lived through worse. Back at the motel, I started packing again. This time it was different. No rush, no sorrow, just sorting. Just deciding. The man at the front desk had started saving me the same room every week. Room 204, second floor view of the field behind the building. Some mornings there were rabbits just still and soft among the weeds. He asked once if I was all right. I told him I was. He nodded and never asked again. There's a certain kind of kindness in quiet people. It's the ones who don't fill silence with noise just to feel important. I appreciated that. I rented his storage unit. Small, clean, cheap. I didn't have much to put in it. A few boxes of photos I wasn't ready to look at. Some documents. My winter coat, even though the season had passed. I donated the rest, gave the clothes away. Left my daughter's wedding. China at the church thrift shop, wrapped neatly. Nothing broken. I started keeping a notebook, just little things. Where I went each day, what I spent, what I remembered. What I didn't miss. On the 5th page, I wrote, "The silence after betrayal is the cleanest thing I've ever known." I opened a new bank account in my maiden name. Had to show 3 forms of ID. The woman at the desk asked if I'd recently divorced. I said, something like that. I transferred the house proceeds into it once the sale closed. Clean break. No fanfare. Just a wire transfer and a final confirmation email. She didn't contact me. Not once. I don't know what she told people. Maybe that I left. Maybe that I snapped. I didn't snap. I simply stopped waiting for her to see me. For the first time in years. I was free of needing to be understood. I booked a train ticket south. One-way coach seat by the window, took only 1 bag. I carried it myself, slow but steady. I watched the landscape change. Grass turned to clay. And trees I didn't recognize lined the tracks. I rented a small cottage near a coastal town monthly. No questions. The landlord lived next door and left a potted fern on the step before I moved in. There was a woman who ran the corner store. She had eyes that had seen some things. She called me ma'am the first time I came in, then just nodded every time after. She asked, "First time here?" I said, "Not really. It's just first time coming for myself." She nodded again like she understood. Maybe she did. I started waking early. No alarm, just my body knowing it didn't have to defend itself anymore. Coffee on the porch. Notebooks in my lap, a hand remembering how to write without anyone watching. I started baking again, not for anyone, just to fill the room with something soft. I gave muffins to the woman at the store, brought banana bread to the library desk. People didn't ask for explanations. They just said thank you. It wasn't family, not the kind that's tied by name, but it was better because it was chosen. Some nights I lit a candle just to watch the flame flicker against the window pane. I thought of my grandson, the way he giggled when he hid behind the curtain, the way he reached for my hand without thinking. I missed him, yes, but I missed me more, and now I had her back. Not the mother version, not the unpaid babysitter, not the house guest with folded towels. Just me, just a woman with her own key again. The first message came 3 weeks after the sale closed. It was short. It just said, "I heard you sold the house." No punctuation. No warmth. No apology. Like she was stating the weather. Like she had no part in the forecast. I didn't answer. A few hours later, another one followed. "Why didn't you tell me?" That one I read twice, slow and deliberate, like a recipe written in a stranger's hand. I thought about replying, but there was nothing to say that wouldn't reopen the wound. She already knew why. The next day, 5 more came. "He's furious. We're staying with friends for now. You didn't have to do this. I wish you'd handled it differently. This is not how family treats each other." That last one almost made me laugh. Out loud to the empty cottage walls. I sat on the porch and let the wind move through me like I was hollow. Let the tide come in and recede again. Nature doesn't argue with consequence. It just keeps going. That night, I turned off the phone. I placed it in the drawer beneath my winter socks. Not because I was angry, because I was done listening to the panic of people who once asked me to disappear. The next few weeks came in waves. Quiet ones. Then storms. She emailed. She messaged through a mutual friend. She had her husband send a voicemail, his voice to calm. It's too even, like a man coached into kindness. "We'd really like to talk. We feel hurt by how things ended. There must be a better way to work this out." There it was again, we. the pronoun she had clung to so tightly since she stopped using mom. I didn't answer. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. The kind you get when you stop holding your breath, waiting to be loved the right way. I checked my mail one morning and found a letter, her handwriting. My name in careful script, still the way I taught her in 3rd grade. Inside, I didn't think you'd go through with it. I thought you were bluffing. I thought you still needed us. Kai said, we've made your point. Kai, I hope you're happy. No signature. I folded the letter once, then again, slid it into the bottom of my notebook. I didn't read it twice. I wasn't happy. That wasn't the goal. But I was whole. That was more than I'd had in years. A week later, she tried something else. She posted a photo, her and her son, on a playground I didn't recognize. Caption: just us now. Starting over, stronger than ever. People commented, you're so brave. You've got this. Family first. She liked everyone. It was odd being erased in public. Seeing her perform the version of motherhood that didn't include me. Seeing her reinvent the story for an audience who'd never seen the unpaid hours. The meals cooked when her hands trembled, the mortgage quietly signed in the dark. I closed the app, not angry, not even surprised. Just finished. I baked a lemon loaf that afternoon, took half to the store, gave half to the boy next door who sometimes waved to me through the fence. His mother smiled as she took it. No questions. The kindness of strangers is sometimes stronger than the obligation of blood. The next Sunday, I went to the market, bought myself a small vase, pale green, chipped at the base. It's perfect for one flower. I filled it with a single daisy I plucked near the dunes. Placed it by the window, top proof that something simple and living still belonged in my life. That night, I allowed myself one memory, her 5th birthday. The look on her face when she blew out the candles. She'd wished for a dog, and I couldn't give her that. But I'd made her a cake with jelly beans shaped like paws. She hugged me so hard I almost dropped the plate. That little girl is still somewhere inside her, I suppose. But she's not mine to save anymore. The town grew on me without trying. Nothing about it begged attention. It was the kind of place people pass through on their way to somewhere louder. But I liked that. I liked the way everything moved slow here, like no one was in danger of being left behind. The mornings started to feel like mine. I'd wake before the sun had fully come up, boil water for tea, and sit on the porch wrapped in the cardigan. Used to wear when my grandson was small. He always tugged at the sleeves. I don't know why I brought it. Maybe because it still held something of me. There was a woman who lived 2 doors down. Her name was Elise. She wore her silver hair in a loose braid and had a small dog that barked once, always once, like it had manners. We passed each other most days. At first it was just a wave. Then it became a smile. Then it became a question. Cold this morning, isn't it? I answered, and we kept talking. It's how it began. She'd been widowed a few years, said the silence used to scare her, but now she wore it like a shawl. Said it kept her warm in ways company never had. She never asked where I came from. She only asked if I liked buttermilk biscuits. I said I did. The next day she left a tin on my porch, still warm. I made coffee for her the day after that. Kuchia. We sat and talked like people who had nothing to sell each other. No masks, no roles to perform. Told me about the book she loved. Told her about the lemon loaf. We laughed, quiet and full. It had been a long time since I laughed without checking who might disapprove. At the library, I started volunteering. Nothing big, just shelving, helping the children find picture books. They called me Miss June. I didn't correct them. There was one boy who reminded me of my grandson. Not in the face, but in the way he tapped the table when he was thinking, like he needed the sound to sort his thoughts. His mother thanked me every week for helping. I told her I liked the company. That was true. One Saturday, a little girl handed me a drawing. Crayon sun, crooked house, stick figure in a blue dress with big hair. She said, "That's you." I took it home. taped it to the inside of my cupboard. It meant more than I expected. I didn't need to be called Mom to feel seen. At night, I wrote just for myself, little pieces of memory, not all sad. The sound of my daughter's laugh when she was 10. It's the way the grocery store used to smell on Sundays. The time I danced alone in the kitchen just because the floor was clean and the radio played something kind. They weren't about her, not. Really, they were about me and how I'd always been there. In the background, holding things together. Making the world soft for others, now. I made things soft for myself. I opened a new checking account and started labeling envelopes with words like groceries, books, small joy. I gave myself permission to buy a bouquet once a month. Nothing fancy, just whatever looked most alive. I chose tulips first. Then a pot of lavender I kept on the WINDOWSILL. I stopped checking the phone. Weeks passed. No new messages. The silence didn't ache like it used to. Stick wrapped around me gently, like a warm hand that asked nothing in return. Sometimes I thought of my grandson, wondered if he missed me. If he asked where I went, she told him the truth or something. Easier, I hoped, selfishly, that he remembered my laugh. Or the way I tucked him in, but I knew better than to chase what I couldn't control. One morning, Elise brought over a stack of old postcards, said she used to collect them, said I could have the ones I liked. I picked one with a sailboat on. Quiet water. The back had no writing. I pinned it beside the little girl's crayon drawing. It felt like hope, the kind you don't announce.
Hi.
That arrives quietly, like steam rising from tea. One evening I walked down to the shoreline. The tide was out, the sand was cool under my shoes. I picked up a shell, small, pale, unbroken. I held it in my hand for a long time. It didn't speak. But I felt understood. The letter came in early spring, postmarked from a city I didn't recognize. Forwarded from my P.O. box to the cottage. My name written in careful script again. A different envelope this time. Heavier. Not rushed. I knew it was from her before I even opened it. Not because of the handwriting, but because of the silence that had led to it. Some people don't speak until there's no audience left. Some. People only say sorry when the room's gone quiet enough to hear their own part in things. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the kitchen table for 2 days. I watched the light move across it in the morning, the shadow fall over. It's at night. I didn't feel dread. Just a kind of slow patience, like waiting for bread to rise. On the third morning, I made myself tea, sat in the same chair I always did, and opened the envelope with a butter knife. Softly, like peeling something old from a wound. It wasn't long. Just a single page. She said she was sorry. She said she hadn't realized what she'd done until it was too late. She said she was overwhelmed, that she thought I would always be there, that she never believed I'd actually go through with. Leaving? She said the house felt colder after I left. That her son asked about me sometimes, that he didn't understand, that he didn't either not until it was all gone. Then came the part I was expecting. She asked if I'd come visit, just once. Just to see him, just to talk. Said she missed me, said she hoped I was happy. I set the letter down without finishing it. My tea had gone cold. I didn't feel anger, not even pain. Just something slow and clear settling in my chest. It's a kind of understanding that didn't need anything from her anymore. Later that day, I wrote a letter back. Not out of obligation. Not for closure, just to speak my piece. I told her I was well, that I was safe, that I'd found a quiet life and was learning how to belong to myself again. I told her I forgave her, not because she earned it, but because I didn't want to carry the weight of her choices any longer. And then I told her the truth, that I would not be coming back, that her son would always have a soft place in my heart. But I wouldn't re-enter a life where I was an afterthought until it was convenient to remember me. I didn't write it with cruelty. I wrote it the way you might close the lid on something delicate, gently, firmly, finely. I signed it with my full name. Not Mom, not Mother, just the name I had before her. I mailed it the next morning, no return address. I didn't need her to respond. I just needed to place the last stone on the path and walk on. That night, Elise came by with soup. Said she'd made too much. We sat on the porch and watched the sky dim. The stars here are soft, not sharp like city stars. They take their time coming out. She asked how I was. I said I was all right. She looked at me the way women do when they know there's more underneath, but they don't press. She just poured more soup. After she left, I opened the drawer where I kept my phone. Turned it on for the first time in weeks. Nothing new. A quiet screen. A still life. I powered it down again. Later, I took out the crayon drawing from the little girl at the library. Smoothed the creases. Taped it to the fridge beside the postcard with the sailboat. They didn't match, but I liked them together. Like proof of what had been and what could still be. Before bed, I lit a candle. The one that smelled like clean linen and rain. I watched the flame until it burned steady. I thought about all the ways I had bent myself to fit into rooms where I was never meant to belong. And now I lived in a house that fit me, not just in space, but in spirit. A place where no one told me I was too much, where no one told me I was no longer welcome. I was welcome here. I was wanted. First, by myself. Then, by the quiet. Then, by the world I built one soft moment at a time. The air smelled like salt and something sweet I couldn't name. I walked the stretch of sand just after sunrise, same as I did most mornings now. The tide had gone out, leaving little pools, tucked between smooth rocks. I stopped to watch the way the light shimmered across them, like the ocean had wept gently and left its tears behind. There was no wind. Just that still hush that comes after you've stopped needing the world to apologize. I brought a tin with me that morning, a small silver one. I'd kept it tucked away in the back of the closet. Inside were all the things I hadn't yet decided what to do with. Things I'd carried from one life into the next. Not out of sentiment, but because I wasn't quite ready to let them go. The hospital band from the night my grandson was born. A note she'd once left. Me on the counter, back when she still said thank you. A button from the coat I'd worn at her wedding. A scrap of wrapping paper from a birthday gift he'd helped me open blue with little stars. None of them were important on their own. Together, though, they were the weight that had followed me like an echo. I sat on a driftwood log and opened. The tin, the paper had faded. The ink was faint, smudged in places. The button was still smooth, still round. Still the same deep navy it had been when I'd sewn it back on after it fell in the parking lot that cold October evening. I turned each thing in my hands like I was reading Braille made of memory. Then, one by one, I let them go. The paper fluttered. Into the tide pool, the band followed. The button sank, slowly, resting among tiny shells. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't cry. I just breathed in. Then out. It wasn't grief anymore. It was release. That afternoon I picked up fresh flowers. From the market. Not for a grave, not for an apology, not for a holiday. Just for my table. I chose freesia. White and pale yellow. The woman behind the counter wrapped them in paper and said they smelled like newness. I told her that was perfect. At home, I cleaned the cottage slowly. Not because it was dirty, but because I liked the way the cloth moved across the counter. The way order gave me room to breathe. I took down the old calendar, replaced it with a blank one. No birthdays circled. No visits planned. Just space. That evening, Elise and I sat on the porch again. She brought wine this time. I poured it into 2 chipped mugs. Neither of us owned glasses, and neither of us minded. We talked about nothing for a long time. The birds, a new bakery that might open near the pier. The way the light changed in the hour before sunset. The way things used to feel when we were young before everything got so loud. When she left, she hugged me. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Later, I sat by the window and lit a candle. I held the shell I'd picked up the week before, the one that had been resting in the center of my table. It was small and smooth, pale pink with a ridge like a heartbeat. I turned it over in my hand. Then gently, I took out a black ink pen and wrote one word on the inside, peace. I placed it on the windowsill, beside the lavender. No one else would see it. No one else needed to. It was mine. That night I wrote a letter. To myself, not the woman I had been before, tired, folded, overlooked. But to the woman I had become, I wrote, you didn't vanish. I just stopped looking. I signed it with the name I'd return to, the one no one gave me. It's the one I chose again. Then I slipped it into the notebook, closed the cover, placed it on the shelf. Tomorrow, I would go to the library, bake something with lemon, walk to the water, smile at the boy. Nextdoor.live, a day without needing to be forgiven for taking up space. And when I sat down to rest, I would not think of her voice. I would think of the shell, of the word inside it, of the silence I had shaped into sanctuary. I would think of how I reclaimed my name, my breath, my place. And I would say, softly but surely this time, I decide who gets to call me anything. Else. Thank you for allowing this story to unfold. Let me know if you'd like it compiled into a single document or audiobook-ready format.